Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back down the rabbit hole. My name is Monty Hook and I'm your host. And today I'm joined by a very special guest, Mr. Robert Ian Bonnick.
Good day, mate.
G'day. Thank you so much for joining.
Pleasure.
This is an honour and a pleasure for me. I've known you for a little while now. You live here in Bali, live the Bali life, and you're married here and got kids and doing all that. But you've got a very interesting history and a very interesting story. And you wear really colourful shirts and you're running the beard now, which is new. I don't know. Did you get that from me? Or
Listen,
did you realise how handsome beards are?
I must confess, I did look at you, Monty, saw that hell of a beard. I thought, you know what? If I can look half as handsome as Monty, I'm good. So I thought, you know, I'll give it a red hot go.
I don't think I'm ever going to have anything on you. You used to be a professional model and a dancer, and we'll get into a little bit of your story. But also, you bought an old copy of the book Soul Survivor.
The first copy.
So, yeah, we'll talk a little bit about this as well. I love you were kind of worried because you wanted to bring the new copy in. Yeah. I love the fact that this is seasoned and it's got a lot of, this has got a lot of memories. And
memories.
This is beautiful. This is really nice. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But first of all, what are you known for, man? What are you known for? Yeah,
so what I'm known for, I'm 51, and the last years have been coming really strongly in the sense of I acknowledge what I've done the first 50 years. And then the other day, it came apparent to me what is my intention for the next 50. And my intention for the next 50 is a summation of life to date, which is, I help people, build, nurture, leverage networks on projects that uplift humanity, right? And that's what I do. And it's about connecting people. And at the same time, I have different legs which are touching on different projects. I'm a coach. I've been a coach for many years. And part of that piece is that understanding that, we're unlimited. We're born unlimited. But most of the time, what happens is that we let life put things on top of us, layer us, that begins to limit us. So part of the coaching that I do is about allowing people to pull those layers off or let those layers go and see how unlimited they are. So again, but the whole thing is about building, managing, nurturing, connecting communities together on projects that uplift humanity.
Yeah, what I know you for is you're a community guy. Like you and you've got a long history in this. You worked in hospitality. You ran nightclubs and was one of the biggest nightclubs in Australia back in the day, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So
your background is really, working with communities and pulling people together in some ways.
Absolutely.
And I think, maybe you can share the story, but in the nightclub industry, I guess, that's a real talent and a real skill to be able to, pull thousands of people together and make something really fun and exciting and keep that driving and keeping that going.
Yeah.
But then there's probably also this underbelly of all of that industry and kind of what happens there. So you're 51 now, and I assume you've well outgrown that stuff as I have for the most part. But tell us a little bit about tell us a little bit about your story. Let's start there because Soul Survivor, you had a bit of a not so normal childhood, I guess. You were growing up in orphanages, and so tell us a little bit about that, and how did that lead you to, having done what you've done? Yeah,
great question. It's all connected, and I don't think you outgrow clubs because for me, the clubs was never about the drugs, the sex, the rock and roll. It was never about that for me. It was about bringing people together around things that we can all connect through. And how this relates to my background is, so growing up for 18 years in 2 children's homes in London, from 6 months of age to 18 years of age, one of my fondest experiences was this melting pot that we created every Sunday afternoon, or most Sundays, in a back garden, big old Victorian house, massive garden. And in the back garden, we had, like a gathering playing football. Not soccer, but football, right? Football, the world game, right? And what happened was that, we would amass 30, 40, 50 people sometimes. and all different cultures, races, ideologies, money, no money, accent, no accent, China, Russia, Germany, France, Spain, Greece, Nigeria, Jamaica, like all these different cultures, which back in those days shouldn't really get along because we're so diverse. But then it was like Switzerland. So in the back garden, you would come, you'd check your ego, you would check your attitude, you would check the ideas that you had about a certain race based upon the color or based upon the money in their pocket or based on the way that they spoke. And then on entering that back garden, it would be like everyone would just communicate and relate as human beings, not as our identities. And this was the first time for me that I really got the sense, because we used to fight like cats and dogs.
And you were young.
Oh, yeah. I was always the youngest. So we used to fight like cats and dogs growing up, race system, all this other stuff going on. But on that Sunday, it was like it was an amnesty.
You put everything aside.
Everything aside, and you just connect as human beings. So the reason why I give you that story is because clubs, to me, that's why I never outgrew clubs, because it was never about clubs. It was about recreating that atmosphere on huge levels, whether it be 50 people, 100 people, 5,000 people, 10,000 people. So I worked out recently that over the years, I've presided over, created, co-created over 2,000 events, and I've personally greeted, connected with well over 1 million people. You know, and because the way that I approach it every night, as I still do now, is a way for me to, you know, whether it was a shower, whether it was being in nature, you know, deep breaths to connect with my body, and then white light coming down, coming through me like a tractor beam, like heaven connecting with earth. And then I'll say a prayer, and that prayer would be, please God, help me to be of best value to the room, best value to the people coming, best value to whoever's watching this. If I'm coaching, best value to the person that I'm coaching. So then what this does is it puts me in a frame of being completely connected to everything.
And being very present.
And being extremely present. So those 1 million people plus, I was present with pretty much every one of them.
And that's really interesting insight. So you always had that. So did you learn, is that something you learned growing up? Did you learn that for yourself, or was that, you know, was religion there, or where did that stem from?
Two experiences. One, when I was 12, in history, we're studying the 100 Years' War. And it was the 100 Years' War going on in the Middle East. And the teacher said, kid behind me said, look, miss, put his hand up. Yes, 100 Years' War, miss. Yes. It can't be the same people fighting, can it? And I never got it. I just laughed with, ridicule. Then sometime later, not far later, there was a racist attack that happened to me, which I go to in that book, Soul's Survivor. It was really, really powerful. And in a negative way, I thought at first. And I was upset at how I performed, because to me, I didn't perform well. I felt that this guy got a beating for me. And I felt really bad and guilty and shameful about it. And days later, once the desire to get revenge came and kind of went, I got a massive insight, which was I realized that I could either be part of the solution or part of the problem. And how that came about was that 12-year-old kid, history class, 100 Years' War, it's not the same people fighting. It's what is passed down from mother to father.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I realized that in that moment, I was like, shit, I can really, if I go back and find these people and try my best to beat them up because I was a strong kid, what would it achieve? No. Absolutely nothing. It would just add to the problem and not be part of the solution. So at that point, I realized from then on, I could be the bridge.
Yeah, there's no point fighting the system. You just got to change the system.
From the inside out. Yeah. And I could be a bridge between black and white, between all these different cultures and colors and races and ideologies. So I wanted to become Secretary General of the UN, which I thought at that time was a position which could bring people together and show us, yes, we have unique, incredible stories, but beneath all of that, we're connected on a level of humanity. Yeah. And that's what I got at 12.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that changed me.
So whilst we're kind of digging into that, I mean, there's a lot of stuff showing up in 2020, right? Like 2020, the way I kind of see it is the circumstances that are happening around the politics, the virus, all these things, I mean, they're not really the problem. The problem is the underlying fear that just lives inside humanity that's been indoctrinated into us and been fed to us by media and, the system that we live in, etc. So what 2020 is doing is just shining a light on what is really there. That's the way that I see it, right? And then what's happening out of that is it's kind of polarizing, right? It's like people like maybe me and you, it has us be fully aware that of what our purpose is, and to step into that even more. It's kind of like, that's what I felt. I felt, okay, well, my mission's just gotten bigger. I've got to now be braver and more courageous and step into that more. And I think a lot of other people, they've shrunk, right? Because that's kind of like what is living inside them. What do you see about 2020? Because you're talking about unity, and this is obviously your reason for being, is bringing people together, and that unity, and no separation between countries and races and all this kind of stuff. So what's your take on 2020 in terms of that?
Right, great question. So first I just want to say that I have empathy for people who have lost jobs, who have lost their life, lost their identity, and all of that. So what I'm about to say is, notwithstanding that has happened and people are suffering, okay, putting that aside, to me it's been a very important and powerful year, because, before we can change anything, we need to see what it is. And we need to take it from what I call the shadow and to bring it to the light. Once it's in the light, it's polarizing. It's called cognitive dissonance, right? So it's impactful because we can't believe what we're seeing for many people, and it's disturbing, and it's challenging, and it's scary, and it's
big. It's really freaking big.
It's really, really big, right? But that's the first thing we have to see. We have to acknowledge what is there. Once we can acknowledge what is there, then we can do something about it. So the way which I see 2020, personally and professionally, was stop, assess, and take action. The stop is what we've just discussed, is things came to a stop. So you have to look at yourself in one shape, one way or form. You have to look at yourself, the way you're living, the way that you're breathing, the way that you're interacting with others. Then to assess is like, well, what can I do better? What is working? What is not working? What am I here to do?
Self-examination.
Yeah. And then taking action is that, saying, well, what is the next thing that I can do? Based on what I've seen, what I've assessed, what is the next step that I can make, right, that can positively impact the planet, humanity, and what I'm doing here? What does that look like? And that's what 2020 has been for me personally and professionally. Yeah.
So what's coming out of this year for you in terms of the way that you see the world and your actions and your decisions, and I think we're all constantly going through an emergence and changing dynamically all the time. But have you changed? Like, has your purpose changed or gotten bigger, or is your crafting your story a different way, or what's unfolded for you?
Yeah. So for me, it's been an incredible clarifier of the work that I've been doing, but more consciously put into a sentence. So whereas before I'm a coach, I'm a speaker, I'm a community organizer, I'm a CEO, I'm an action taker. I can bring people together around things. I can clarify messages. I can simplify messages. I can do all of that. So prior to this, that's what it would have looked like. Now it's more conscious, right? So I connect people. I create networks, nurturing and collaborations to create projects that uplift humanity. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's been a clarifier of what are the main things that I do. What is that thing that I do?
Well, and also getting rooted in your values as well, right? It's like really understanding, getting insight to what are your core values, so that I think that's where that articulation can come from, right? Because then you can disregard what is not important. You get really clear on, okay, what are my values? And it's like, okay, well, it's got to be above the line, and everything else below the line is like, no.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great way to see it. I didn't look at that before, actually, in that way. But you're spot on.
Tell us about the book, Soul Survivor.
Yeah.
What do people read in here? What's in the story? What are people going to learn from the book?
Great. Soul Survivor, How an Abandoned Child Went From Nothing to Everything, published by New Holland. So it's a book which I wrote some years ago and came out 2 years ago, published by New Holland. And it's a book which I love. It's a book which it's got 3 parts. The first part is kind of going through my story. So what it's like growing up in a children's home, the sort of things that happen, the characters. One guy called Lee Burke ended up getting shot in the head. Incredible guy, taught me so much. All of these guys were teachers and mentors for me. These 18 kids, which over time, because revolving door, 0, 18, you leave, next ones come in. I've already seen hundreds of people over the years. Were incredible mentors for me. And it goes into also how, I'm an introverted extrovert. So I'm introverted at home and I'm extroverted when I'm out. It goes into why that happened. It goes into, the second part of the book goes into what life was like when you're able to see, that you're limiting yourself. And if you can pull that glass ceiling away, what's possible. So during that time, I worked with Madonna. I worked with a supermodel, Naomi Campbell. I had a business voted number 3 in the world, which is one of the nightclubs, which was in cooperation with Antonio Zambarelli, incredible partner, and Paul Nicola-Rakis. How I then end up having 2 kids and a family, right? So that middle part of the book is a really great message for us all if we can unlock the pieces of limitation, what we're capable of doing. And the third part of the book gives practical exercises to allow you to come into that state of flow, understanding, self-examination, and how we can kind of roll with that to inspire and activate those unlimited parts of ourselves at will and consciously. Yeah, so that's the 3 parts of the book. Yeah,
yeah, cool. Well, we'll make sure people get the links to go and get online and all of that. Cool.
Yeah.
You also help people now with their stories and writing books, etc., and unpacking, their stories. Tell us a little bit about that. And why is it so difficult for people to articulate their stories? Like, one of my observations of myself and other people is that it's very easy to see other people's gifts and stories, but
not your own.
It's very difficult to see our own. Like, why do you think that is, and how do you help people kind of unravel that?
Yeah, great question. So, I think, had this interview yesterday with a beautiful girl, Balinese, and another beautiful girl from Germany. And, what came up with the Balinese culture was this thing about not wanting to stand out, not wanting to show off. And I think that seeded into our society, that if we have a skill and we're really, really good at something, people are going to pull us down. Yeah. So I think we have this thing, a program which is kind of holding us back. We don't want to stand out. We don't want to shine too brightly. So in a way, we're dumbing ourselves down. So I think that goes partly to explain why we find it difficult, to really give ourselves the biggest pat on the back and say, man, you're really good at this. You're exceptional at that. This is your gift. This is your master strength. Let's get into it and show the world about it, right? Yeah.
I mean, there's merit to the idea of not being arrogant, but we also use that as an excuse and a reason to not put ourselves out there and say, well, I'm not going to do a podcast because, I don't want to appear like I'm famous, or what I mean?
Yeah, and I think that is kind of linked in with that. Yeah. And I think as well, our generation, the last few generations, our parents have come from that. Think about it, the world wars, all the stuff is always been about putting the cover on. Coming from England is a great example. And
just be safe.
Putting the cover on.
Be safe and secure. Yeah.
Yeah, safe and secure.
Don't rock the boat. Don't do anything too grandiose.
There you go. Yeah. So all of these things contribute to that feeling of awe, right? But with other people, it's like, hey, you're amazing at this. You're amazing at that. You should do this. I noticed this. I noticed that. Right? It's an easy way for us to get excited about something else, somebody else, but it's not us, right? And so where Turn Your Story into a Book and also Speak Up Monday, these two things come from the same place, which is about, I love being able to do what you do, right? Which is like sitting down with people and teasing out, seeing these things, the defining moments in their lives, things which have just were that switch that allowed them to activate latent parts of themselves to really see, wow, this thing can take me to the next level. This thing, and seeing that in general, we are, the human species is, in a way, it's about, being in service of others. You know, it's about saying, I've got this piece. So I see life like this. I see life as a jigsaw puzzle. And, you know, we all have a piece. Some of us have more than one piece. And these pieces, each piece, what determines the potency of it is that if I'm a piece, what is it that I do really, really well? And double down in that. And then it's this understanding of I trust myself and I trust others, which means I'm not going to keep this thing to myself and be limited and narrow. Yeah. I'm going to share it with other people and share it with the world. And the last piece is about, you know, it's something that I'm doing which is inspiring humanity to be greater, to be better, to be more empathetic in some way, shape or form. And these three things are the glue which brings all these jigsaw pieces together.
Yeah, and what I like about that is I think where people really get stuck, it again comes back to what I said before about people get stuck on, you know, what is my story, what are my gifts, because that's not that easy for people to actually articulate. Like I've had so many experiences with people that said, "Oh, you're really great at this thing." I'm like, really? Huh? Like what I think I'm good at is like not what other people are reflecting back to me, right? So I think the really hard part about that is really figuring out what you're actually really, really good at. And I think it's a never-ending journey. Like I do a lot of self-exploration, right? I do a lot of self-examination, and I'm constantly looking, you know, at myself and all these things. And just recently I got a really, really deep insight that, you know, because I've been thinking about, people are asking me, you know, oh, you should do a coaching program, you should do a mastermind, you should do something. And I've never felt called to do that, right? And when I examined it, and I got this through an interaction with somebody else, that what's really important to me is very few deep and meaningful relationships, which is why I'm a very good business mentor and I'm a very good business partner, right? Like in those situations, I'm amazing, right? Because I can work very, very closely and deeply when that deep relationship is there. But I've never felt called to do something like big because it kind of, I guess, on an unconscious level, feels kind of transactional to me. And that gave me a really deep kind of thought like, okay, this depth is a very strong value for me. So if I'm going to create something, it's got to be rooted around that. It's got to stand around that, right? So how do you think people can figure out what their gifts and their values are? Because I see so many people, and you probably see this as well, like especially in the coaching world, right? Everybody's a freaking coach these days, but they're doing it and they're creating the marketing, they're creating the message based on what they think that their supposed audience that they're making up, that they are intellectualizing, that they think that they want. They're making up their content and they're crafting their program or whatever for what they think those people want, rather than really understanding what are my values, what am I really about, what are really my gifts, and then figuring out how to authentically share that and connect that. Mm-hmm. There's a massive separation, right? Yeah. And I think the real work in life is figuring that out, which is what you're talking about, what I'm talking about, right? But you've got to kind of start somewhere. Yeah. So how can people kind of tap into that depth, if you like, a little bit sooner? Great
question. So there's a great technique. And I learned this a while ago, and I've been having this conversation a lot with people recently, and it's fantastic, right? So the 3 10s or the 3 5s, and so the first thing you want to do is 5 or 10 things, it's up to you. Grab a piece of paper and write down 5 or 10 things that you love to do, like just love to do. It might be jumping out of an airplane. It might be solving people's problems. It might be something else, right? But you write those 5 or 10 things down. If you've got more, you've got more. It's great. The second thing you do is write down the 5 or 10 skills that you feel that you have or can easily upskill to. Now, when you do this, we've all got a friend who's brutally honest. You've got that brutally honest friend, we've got those who love us, right?
That's there you go. Man.
That's you, baby. So if you get stuck, you ask one of those brutally honest friends, say, look, what do you think my gifts and skills are? What do you think I can easily upskill to? And they'll tell you, right? And sometimes it's hidden from your view. Yep. So you've got those 2 things going. Then the final piece is, okay, then how can I integrate those things that I love to do and these skills that I already have or can easily upskill to in an activity that I can monetize. And then when we get to this third piece, because people often have an idea of what these first two are, but they've never asked their brain to consider how can I combine those things into doing an activity. And out of that, things come that you've never seen before, right? I've done this with lots of people, and each time I do it, there's always something new that comes out of it. And it's like, and you see the light go on in the eye. It's like, whoa, I think I've got it. And they go, and then you switch them 2 weeks later, and it's like, I found this, and I did this, and I took the first step, and now I've got a business partner, and I'm moving on with it. Like, I've got 3 people like that straight off that I've done this with. It's phenomenal. It's so simple, but don't misunderstand, because there's no complexity to it, that it's not powerful, because it's extremely powerful. So first one, 5 or 10 things that you love to do. Next one, 5 or 10 skills that you have or can easily upskill to. And then number 3, how can I combine those 2 things in an activity that I can monetize, right? So that's the first part. The second part, 3 days ago, sitting down with a copywriter, right? This guy's amazing. He's working with one of the top self-development gurus in the world, actually. And it's funny because what we're talking about was, how a lot of clients that he's working with want to have it all perfect, right? They want to have the perfect pitch, the perfect background. So they have this look of perfection in their product, their branding and marketing and so on. And he says, but they're making the biggest mistake. They're leaving out their story.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's not necessarily so crystal clear, that you're not necessarily completely perfect in your delivery. Like, you want the inconsistency, not the inconsistency, but you want the non-perfect things.
Well, you want the space for authenticity.
Yes. Yeah. And he said that's actually, and when he's done that, that's when it's converted. That's when people get them, because people don't want perfection. They dream about it, but what they want is a person they can relate to. Was real. So whether you're a coach who's got, like coaching course distinctions or whatever, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, you want to be able to clearly tell the story, your story, and with all of the foibles that you have in there, right, which aren't necessarily perfect, which are kind of rough around the edges. You want to get that out there, because that then becomes more of something I can actually believe and I can connect to and I can hang with, and I feel more confident with you.
Yeah, and there's definitely power in vulnerability as well. And because I reflect on having done NLP speaker training and all this kind of stuff, and I'm sure there were some things that I took out of it, that I could use, but because it was so strategized. It's like, there's this technique, and then then you're trying to craft something which is so strategized. And the moment that I dropped all of it and said, okay, well, let me just put some slides together and let me just speak what comes out of my mouth. It's like, it just all of a sudden became very, very powerful. And it's like, this podcast, it's like, I've got some questions prepared. I think I've asked one question that's on my notes, because we wouldn't have the space for the connection and the authenticity. And maybe the business world is a little bit different now in 2020 than it was maybe in 1980, right? When it's like everything's scripted and, like there's hard sells, and it's a different world now. With social media. You can't hide. So people are expecting that authenticity, which is a beautiful thing, which is really, really amazing, right? So that being said, what's the future business wise for you? Like I think you noted on your in your Instagram that your big mission in life is to connect with, to positively impact 1 billion people, right? Absolutely. So let's talk about that a little bit, because some people would look at that and go, well, how the hell do you measure that? Like that's arrogant, Robert. Like, how the fuck do you think you're going to do that? Right. So talk through your reasoning for putting that, because I assume that is just for you, right? That's not for you to dictate to the world, hey, this is who I am and look at me. This is a message that you're planting for yourself.
Mate,
so
you nailed it.
Talk us through that.
You absolutely nailed it. So recently I turned 51, as I mentioned, and I look back over my life and I've seen what's happened. I've seen some of the things that have happened. I've seen some of the patterns. I've seen the mistakes that I've made and learning from. Some of them I'm still paying for, right? So like I've seen all of that. And what I've noticed is this, right? It's the power of the question that creates the outcome. So simply put, if I ask you a crap question, then the outcome I get will be crap. If I ask you a quality question, the answer that I get will be quality. So now it's the quality of the question that you ask yourself that determines your outcome and the results that you get. So therefore, for me, it was just saying, oh, well, okay, the next 50 years, what's my intention? Right? By me saying, well, okay, I want a positive, and I've told you before that, there's 2,000 events, and I know exactly how many people I've impacted already, right? And that, if you multiply it out, will probably get to a couple 100 million, right? When you do that number. But so for me, it's not actually about the number, because 1 billion people, one app now, if it goes completely viral, will probably positively impact 1 billion people. But so the intention of it is simply the frequency. Yeah. The frequency of saying that I want to positively impact a lot of people. And I've put the number at 1 billion plus. So what it does and how it's affected my life already is that since setting that intention, the quality of the intention, the quality of the question, the people that I've been meeting have been global change makers. Right? So because I've set that frequency so high, then life is compelled to send people, resources, and individuals in my path.
Circumstances.
Exactly, that can help me to achieve and reach that goal.
And even though you don't know what that looks like, you don't know what the path necessarily looks like. And what came to me when you were saying that was about the quality questions. And my observation of you, and from this conversation as well, was that, like you said before, when you're with people, like you're present with people, right? When you're present with people, you give the space, the opportunity for the quality questions, because you can tune into what's feels right in the moment. Whereas if you come in like fully scripted, like this is my question 1, question 2, question 3, it's just like it feels clunky, right? And you're not giving the space for that connection. So how can you ask the right questions in that? So my observation of you is that this presence is very, very important, right? So I think that's really valuable for people, that presence. And, you can talk about presence in different regards. Like I have practices through my day, and I try to meditate every day that I can. And I have moments throughout the day where I'm, trying to be present. Hang on. I even have like crystals here, and these things, they might seem like gimmicks, but it allows me to kind of just be always just like present, like just reminders everywhere of always being present. Right. So is this something that you have cultivated, the presence in all aspects of your life, or is this just the nature of who you are?
Great question. So one thing comes up, 2 things come up. Number 1 is, I learned a long time ago, there are 3 types of listening. The first type of listening is I'm listening to interrupt. We all know that one, right? It's like, yeah, but I think, right? We listen to interrupt. Number 2 is that, it's we're feigning listening, meaning we're pretending to listen. So our attention is elsewhere. Yeah, I can hear.
Well, we're listening with an intention to say something rather than listening to respond, right?
Yeah. So that's the first one. Yeah. And the second one is kind of like a different aspect of that, which is pretending to be listening when you're doing something else. Multitasking is the way you could look at that one. And the third type of listening is called active listening. Now, active listening is where I'm listening to what you're saying and what you're not saying. And it's with a curious mindset. And this is the most important type of listening that you can cultivate. And anyone and everyone can cultivate this. And then, so that's a first answer. The second answer, so I'm an introverted extrovert. So what that means is that growing up in a children's home, at home, I was extremely shy. I was stuttering. I sucked my two fingers. I was uncomfortable with how I looked. I was uncomfortable with the color of my skin and so many other things. But what that gave me was an ability to look at people and see the outcome of their choices. And with the kids' home, there are guys there who were in trouble with the police, guys there who died, guys there who were shot violently. Like I saw it all. And because I was an introvert, I got to see exactly what, as I mentioned, the outcomes of those actions were. So that gave me an insight into watching people, looking at people's body language, it's assessing and seeing and sculpting,
like
right?
An intuition, like you developed
Absolutely.
an intuition.
And then what I realized from that, because I was always a joker, and I was a joker because what I realized was a way to protect and not get beaten up was to crack a joke, make people laugh, right? It's like, I'm having so much fun with this guy. Why do I want to beat him up? You know, I want to have this guy around me. So what I realized was, you know, how I could create a container of making someone completely comfortable, right? So I had a guy, Richard Harrington, the other day, who you should have in your show, which you probably have had or will have in the future. And he said to me, Rob, I was sitting down with you, and within 15 minutes, I was like, I didn't sign up to be talking about this personal thing. I didn't sign up for that, but I'm comfortable to talk about it, right? So making people comfortable, allowing people to be comfortable is the key skill that you have, that I have, that is key for humanity, right? Because if I'm employing active listening and I'm truly curious about you, I set a space where you feel so comfortable and so at peace that you want to share.
And there's no judgment in that.
No.
There's no judgment. There's
No judgment.
no judgment. And that's the biggest problem in the world, right?
Right.
It's like, that's the root cause of just about everything.
Right. Yeah. So empathy, this is number 3, empathy is another thing. So what I realized, 12 years of age, 100 years war, it's not the same people fighting. It's passed down from offspring to next generation to generation. What I realized was the power of empathy. So when I have a feeling about somebody, or not a feeling, a view, it's like me projecting my mini movie onto you because you're American, and Americans are like this, and this based from the media and all the rest of the other stuff. So what I can do is I can ask you questions and say, like, what was your life like? What happened to you between 0 and 7? I can get a true picture of who you are, because again, we understand theta brainwave state, 0 to 7, we're impressionable. These are formative years, and then the RAS kicks in, takes over, and takes us on this unconscious, subconscious railroad into our future without us even knowing about it, right? So once I'm able to get clear on what happened to you when you were young and how you saw the world, then I know why you've become who you are. And then I realize that unless you become aware of it, or unless you've tuned in or had something happen to you that's created this awareness of who you are and who you're being, you have no idea that you're doing these things. So when I realize that you are doing the best you can with what you have, I have nothing else but to have empathy for you. Yeah. When I have empathy for you, then I can connect to anyone on the planet.
And also, what comes to me there, because I feel like I have pretty similar abilities, right?
You do.
In that I can just have a 1-minute conversation with somebody, and I could pretty well unravel a lot of their patterns, right?
Yeah.
But what that's also allowed me to do is, because it happens so easily, I can't live in judgment ever, because I would be judging everybody, and I would just be in a constant state of like despair, and this is fucked up, and I'd be judging everybody.
That's right.
So you've got to kind of have compassion when you have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then number 4 is turning that on yourself. Right? So then when you begin to have compassion for yourself, you can connect with anyone.
Yeah, you can't have compassion for other people without having compassion for yourself.
Yeah. And through doing what we do, interviewing, speaking to people, getting to people's stories and finding out what makes them tick, is super powerful, because then we get to see ourselves again and again and again and again and again and again and again. And once we get to that space of unity consciousness, then we see the world very differently, you know, and we see people very differently. And that's why I refer to it as a jigsaw puzzle of just
Mine's about
laying
1,000 pieces.
Yeah, however many pieces it is. I mean, I still don't know how many pieces mine are,
Yeah.
but I just understand that we're all part of it,
Yeah.
right? And then when we give each other the space and the time to, I mean, you know, like I've hung out with everybody from the street sweeper, metaphorically speaking, to some of the most well-known people in the world, celebrities and so on. And one of the things which I'm so happy that I got was this understanding that no matter who we are, there's a few cardinal things that we want to achieve. We want to be respected, loved, honest, cherished, and seen for who we are, regardless of that. And once you get that and understand that, you can connect and relate to anyone on planet Earth who's a human being. I know that drop me in any country in the world, anywhere, anytime, whether I speak the language or not, I know I can find my way up. I know I can.
Yeah.
Why? Because I've been in so many different situations with so many different types of people.
In so many different cultures.
So many different cultures, speaking different languages, and all the rest of that I've seen it so often now that I'm convinced of it.
Yeah.
It's a knowing for me. It's not a theory, it's a knowing.
Yep.
And this is what we do when we give people the space and the time to see this within themselves and to speak from that place. And it's like a mirror. And they get that beautiful perspective for themselves, and they get to know themselves at a deeper level, and that impacts them, their friends, their family, their community, the planet.
Yeah. So how can people cultivate this? I know it's, you know, for somebody like me and you, we've got stories from childhood that has led us to, you know, have these experiences and potentially this thing as a gift, right? But I know for myself, that was maybe an inherent thing for me that was always there, but it was dormant for a very long time. Yeah. It's really only been the last few years that I've really started to cultivate this, right? Actually be proactive about cultivating it through meditation, through plant medicine, through spiritual practice, through mindfulness, stillness, whatever, staring at the wall, all sorts of things. What do you have some practices around this for yourself?
Yes. So what came up for me, which I want to share with you. The interesting thing happened to me the other day, some years ago. Found my father again, family tree, all this stuff. And I realized that in my family tree, Jamaican Maroons, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey. Now, all these guys are guys who underpin the American Civil Rights Movement, right? They're all very outspoken, ardent supporters of being in service of others, right? So now how does this relate to the question that you asked? It's this awareness that we're in service of others. It's this awareness of, you know, the world is a reflection of me and I am a reflection of it. It's called Ubuntu, right, in African, whereas I exist because of you, right? It's a beautiful way to look at it. And how we cultivate that is by cultivating a relationship with ourselves, meditation, reflection, super powerful things to do, super important because we all have wisdom within ourselves, right? And to get to that wisdom, for most of us, is about silence. It's about spending those times in nature. It's about spending those times, and it can be 2 minutes, 1 minute. I started with 30 seconds, and I built it up to 20 minutes, half an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. But it's spending that time with ourselves silently, just reflecting.
Which is actually difficult for people because the immediate reaction is if you feel like there's something missing, like if you feel like you're not on purpose or you're unfulfilled or whatever, like you go seeking for it. It's like, I got to take more action. I got to hustle to find that thing, right? That's the kind of the human immediate response is to go and do that. It's a little bit counterintuitive to go, okay, well, I want to create something more, so I'm going to sit still.
Got it. One thing comes up. It's what I call the 3 pillars of purpose. So purpose, a lot of people talk about purpose, and if you haven't got it, you feel like, oh man, I haven't got purpose. You know, oh man, you know, like I feel like I'm not alive, or I feel like I'm a second-class citizen, or I feel guilty, and you don't need to be. So this is what came to me some time ago, and it's nothing. Neither one is better or worse than the other. It's just a powerful place to stand. So the first pillar of purpose is having no purpose. This is what I call following your bliss. Philip Costet, thank you so much indeed, is a reminder from him. And this happened during this time is when I worked with Madonna, business vote number 3 in the world, supermodels in Milan, doing all this stuff. I had this mindset, this approach when I was able to do all these bucket list things. So this is like, living for the moment, doing what I love to do right now, living, following my bliss. If I want to do this, I do this. I don't have a purpose. I just have this feeling of whatever's going to happen to me today, I'm going to make the most of it, no matter what that looks like. Yeah. I'm going to make the most of it, right? That's the first pillar of purpose, having no purpose. The second pillar of purpose is being pushed by something. So because I was an orphan, grew up that way, I felt pushed, right, to galvanize other people, to bring other people together, to have what I didn't have on a certain level, right? So I felt pushed to do that. So that is being pushed by something towards my purpose. The other one is being pulled by something, So this, my favorite story for this one is that I was on the bike. I love riding around on the bike here in Bali, so much to see, so much to look at. And ideas just drop in from who knows where. Yeah. And they just drop in, and it was like, oh, and it just drops in, and it's like, well, I'm going to do that because I can, because I'm available to, and I want to do it. So then this was an idea. There's an event called a Brow Food and Wine Festival. There was this community event that I launched, that I drove through. We ended up getting 5,000 people in one day to Tomorrow Gallery, which was great. But this idea came out of this being pulled by something. Yeah. And often it's like you might watch something on TV or listen to a podcast like this, and you just feel teary. Something just hits you, and you cannot explain why.
Yeah, it's an inspiration, like a pull of love or something.
That's right. And you feel that, just do it. Just do it. So these 3 things have got nothing to do with stillness or quietness, but it still will get you there.
Yeah. What I like about that is, and I did a post on this a week ago or so, and I wrote something, and what I said was, your purpose is not the song. Your purpose is the singing, right? So when you feel like you have no song, you don't go looking for the song. You just sing.
Yeah.
Just sing.
Beautiful, man.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I really like that. So I got to ask you, like, about the modeling thing. So tell us about that. Like, how long ago was that? Last year, I'm guessing.
Yeah, like I'm still modeling, mate. We're saying. Funny thing. So as I mentioned before, when I was very younger, I didn't like the way that I looked. I grew up with Caucasian values of beauty. So my nose was too big, my lips were too big, pointed head. Like I would pull myself to pieces in the mirror, and like I would be really, really down on how I looked, depressed for days on end. No one even knew this was going on. And
this is what, in your 20s or teenage?
No, this is younger. So this is like 9, 10, 11, really? 12, 13, 14, like all the way. And so just out of interest, what I found one day was that, in that darkness where I felt I was spiraling down and down and down and down and down, I found this voice. And this voice was a supportive voice. It wasn't pulling me apart. It was actually trying to contribute something to me. And it was warm, and it felt comfortable, and it felt comforting. And it was like, Rob, just look after your skin. Like, what? Rob, just look after your skin. That's what this voice said. And that's how it started for me, this supportive voice, because we all have these different voices going on, but it's what we tune into, and it's find that supportive voice. But anyway, that's a little bit of an aside. So I grew up thinking that I wasn't good enough, that I didn't look the way that I wanted to look, and I wanted to have all these procedures done. So I came from this position of not feeling enough. And then one friend of mine, Claire, when I was in Australia, when I was in Sydney, Sydney, Australia, and Claire was like, mate, maybe you can do some modeling here, in Australia. I was like, what? Modeling, And I said, okay, I'll give it a try. And then we did this test together. She was a big model. We did this test together, and I bumped into her literally. I didn't know she was in Sydney. We literally bumped. It was like one of those moments destined to be. And then what happened was I bumped into her there. I did this test, and then I took them to some agencies, and one called Ursula Hufnagel Chic, a big agency in Sydney, but at that time wasn't that big. And she took me on. I did a few running commercials, black guy, athlete, Came back to London, and I carried on But this is all from, remember, not feeling enough, right? Not feeling enough. So trying to find what's the word? Acknowledgement. Well, not that, but this from the outside. Well, validation. Thank you. I was trying to find validation, and I kept going on London, and I was modelling a bit, not earning much money, not doing anything, but doing the occasional job and walking around with this book of great photos, and still not feeling enough. And then one day I got this crazy idea. It's like, you know what? If I'm broke and I'm just not doing anything and I'm not really working, I may as well do it in Milan because that's where you go. And cut a long story short, went to this trade show with another model friend who was broke and not doing anything as well, and met this guy called Franco Trincanetti, this photographer. And he said, look, if you ever come to Milan, look me up. He knew and I knew that I would never go to Milan. So it was one of those empty promises. And then about 3 months later, I was like, you know what, I'm done. I just reached one of those moments saying, I am done with this shit. Like, I'm not earning money. I'm not doing anything. Got the occasional job. I may as well go to Milan. That's where you go. So I plucked up the courage, plucked up the money. And like I said, the quality of the question, how can I get to Milan was the question. I met one fashion designer called Vijay Chand. And we got along really well. And he was moving to Milan, right? Because if you ever come, you got a floor to sleep on. This is before Airbnb or couch surfing. And then I was like, you know what? I got a job. And this job gave me just enough money to pay for a flight to go to Milan. I was like, right, that's it, I'm going. So one day I packed my bags and I just jumped on a plane, went to Milan, found this guy's house, knocked on the door, and he was surprised as me. And he goes, oh, well, okay, yeah, you're here, right? So I lived in Milan. 3 days later, I was like, I need to go. I felt a pull. I got to go and see this guy, Franco Trincanetti. I went to this place in Milan. I got lost trying to get there, this little piazza. I'm walking across. Now, months have passed. I had no idea what he even looked like, this guy. And so I was walking across this small piazza, like maybe 4 or 5 square meters, not very big. And I saw this tall guy with a suitcase walking towards me. Something within me was like, I think this might be Franco. I was like, Franco. And he looks at me and goes, Si. And that was the extent of my Italian at that time. And I was like, we met in London, trade show, remember me? He didn't remember me. But that time I was kickboxing, so I had a good body and all the rest of that. And it just so happens that the models at that time, a guy called Marcus Schreckenberg was killing the game. Tyson, another beautiful black guy. And these guys were they were bodies, very strong bodies, very handsome bodies. And he looked at me up and down and he goes, okay, now it was Friday. He was leaving for the weekend where he was going to be flying to New York on Monday. If I didn't hit him, then I would not have. These moments that happen, these sliding door moments. So we did a test there and then. He goes, right, come to my studio right now. And we did a test, this body shots and all this Italian stuff. He goes, okay, on Monday I'm flying, but tomorrow, and this was the day they had their own dark room, I'm going to develop the photos. You come back tomorrow, you get the photos. I'm going to send you to see a guy called Marco at an agency called Ricardo Gay. All I heard was gay agency. Okay, whatever, man, gay agency. So I went there, I got the photos, goes, you hooked me up. Now, I went to this gay agency on Monday. He had gone to New York by this time, right? I walk in, all I see are these beautiful guys. I'm still faking it till I make it. I'm still not confident about how I look. I'm walking in, I see all these handsome guys, and I go, and I see Marco. And I go, Marco's over there. And I go and sit down, and I wait with my book there, with his new photos in. And he goes, next! And I come in, and I try and be confident, my head up. I walk in, I put my book down. This guy flashes from my book in a blink of an eye. I'm thinking, oh, my book is shit. Blink of all these photos, right? And it's okay, come back, tomorrow. I'm going to organize some castings for you. Sign here. I'm like, gay agency in Milan. The guy's saying, sign here. What have I got to lose? So I signed. And then on the way out, I start to look, trying to avoid the gaze of other people because I'm not confident at all. I'm looking up at the wall, and then I see a picture of Naomi Campbell. I see a picture of Linda Evangelista. I see a picture of Christy Turlington, Cindy Crawford. And then I realize it's not gay agency. It's just the way that he pronounced it. It's Ricardo Guy. Now, Ricardo Guy was the top model agency in Milan for all of the supermodels. So I managed to meet a photographer who knew the booker who backdoored me in to the best agency in Milan. The rest is history. I worked with all the girls, Naomi Campbell, Evangelista, during fashion shows, during shoots. I had billboard campaigns.
Wow.
I went ballistic in Milan. But you know what? At the height of my success, short-time success in Milan, what I realized was that these people that I thought were good looking, a lot of these guys were more insecure than I was about how they looked. And I realized then that the looking for the outside to validate the inside,
like a compensation,
is a nil-sum game.
Like a compensation,
Correct. And I realized in my short modeling career, I realized that it's got nothing to do with how you look.
Yeah.
It's the inside out, not the outside in.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like, knowing who you are and you sharing your story, like you got some massive, profound insights about yourself from how you got there and what you would doing there, which kind of gave you some really big kind of stepping stones lesson to other things in your life, where other people would very easily get trapped in that, very, very easily. And then as soon as they stop getting booked, it's like they're nobody anymore. Right.
Yeah, I moved on from there to dance.
Yeah,
I met another model called Marco, and he goes, "Look, Rob, you can get money. You can make money by appearing in nightclubs. It's called Per fare immagine. It's called." And I said, "What? Make money?" Just said,
so you're a cage dancer.
There's more to it than that. So what happened was, I went with them a couple of times. This other agency, and we were paying money just by hanging out in clubs, right? Being paid to hang out. Awesome. And then I'll be bored about that, and I couldn't speak Italian well at that time. So I used to dance. He goes, "You can dance?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, actually, there's another industry in Italy which is podium dancing." I was like, "You're kidding me?" He goes, "Yeah, it's a full-on profession. Like professional dancers, they do this. And if you can dance," I said, "Yeah, I can dance." He goes, "Well, you can become this." I was like, "You're kidding me?" So what I did next was I did this one commercial for Gatorade, Grundig, which went ballistic in Italy. Now, Italians, what I learned from Italians is that they are incredible at marketing and selling. They're born to do it. So what I did is I joined this other agency, and then I became this celebrity podium dancer, right? So it was like Robert Ian Bonnick from Grundig commercial. So I would literally come on for like 5 or 10 minutes, do the thing, and then do the splits. Like some crazy move. I was really good at spinning. So you see Michael Jackson do the spinning, the turns. I could do like maybe 8 or 9 turns. On the spot, right? And I would be like, and then drop down into splits and be like, all right? So I could move people, right, with my body and my dance.
Yeah.
So I did that, and by then the modeling was drying up anyway, and then I became one of the most famous, well-paid podium dancers in Italy in 1 year.
So that's going to be the second book. Robert Ian Bonnick, Celebrity Podium Dancer. No, that's really...
because I mean, I had no purpose. I've got to tell you, I had no purpose. I was in the.
But your purpose was to follow the breadcrumbs, follow the yellow brick road.
Yeah. I mean, the way that I lived was like this. I would treat every day like it's my last day, right? And I'll make the most of any situation that happens, no matter how dark. Like this photographer, like we went back we worked together for about a year, and I went back to at one point, and one thing happened where I was in a shoot, because a lot of the shoots are nude, and there was some stuff that happened, and he was moving little things. Well, they were little because it was cold, but it was moving things around and was dwelling a little bit too long on the moving. And it became very apparent to me that what he wanted wasn't something that I was prepared to give, right? So then that's when my modeling career, that's when I started to think, you know what, is this really what I want to do? Yeah. And I saw all the dark side of the industry from all the girls and the guys working and all the rest of that. So I got a really good insight.
In those times, did you have something in your mind or the intuition to know that there was something bigger and better for you beyond that? Because I think, my assumption is a lot of, actors and, models and dancers and all this kind of thing. It's like, well, that's their world and they can very easily get trapped there, right?
Yeah.
And if they didn't, and they don't necessarily have something beyond that in their mindset. So did you always have the intuition telling you that there was something bigger and better beyond that, or something more meaningful beyond that? Not saying that podium dancing is not meaningful.
Yeah, like very meaningful, mate. Because the thing about performance is that through the way that you perform and the way that you invite people in, it's like you're exercising something for them. That's not another.
Well, I mean, this is the
story.
same thread of connection. Like that's
right. It's all part of the same puzzle.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I've always felt that there's something driving me. And I haven't really been able to put my finger on it, but see, 'cause there's certain times in the children's home where I should have died, and I didn't. And coming out of there were three things which came up only today as a reminder. Never forget where I'm from. Always remember who helped me to get to where I am today, and always give back where I can without the need for getting something back in return. And so these things, and even in Milan, like with this state of just treating every day like it's a gift, no matter what happened to me, finding the good in it. There was something that was always there, and I couldn't put my finger on it, or I couldn't name it, but there's always something there, which is like, man, there's something that you're here to do, right? And this is part of it, but not necessarily it.
That's the singing.
So keep on going.
That's the singing. Yeah. That's cool, man. So look, two more questions for you. So one is, you live here in Bali. You got a beautiful young family, 2 daughters, right?
Yeah.
2 daughters. How do you? I think one thing that attracts people to Bali is we have a beautiful lifestyle here, right? I mean, I don't work all that much, right? I spend a lot of time in the gym and doing ice baths and meditating and going surfing and all this kind of stuff. I imagine that you're here also partly for the lifestyle and what Bali has to offer. How do you balance that, like with your ambitions and because it's a different conversation for different people. How do you put those things together?
Great question. So that one is it's a very interesting one, because there's different periods of your life where things become more apparent and things become more important. So with Marina, my partner, and we made a decision a while ago that we wanted to be parents who would grow up with our kids, and we wouldn't be surrogate parents in the sense that, we put them off to somewhere and then see them in the morning, and then when they come back at night, kind of see them for a little bit, and then they go off and we do our thing. And so that one has been challenging to do. It was challenging to do in Australia, in Sydney. Found it even more and more challenging towards the end. And then moving here, the idea was that it would be easier for us to do that. Coming to Bali, learning the culture, beginning to learn the language, and it's hustling because like we're here. There's things to manage in Australia. There's things to manage here. So a lot of my time has been creating a network and all the rest of that. However, we have a Sunday, which is a family day, and we stick to it, right? So we do something with all of us on Sunday for the majority of the day. In the morning, not in the last couple of weeks, but in the morning, it was like, when I get up, I meditate, I spend time with the kids in the pool, right? So we get this pool time, we play and we have fun and all the rest of that. And then I get home before nighttime. Before the sun goes down, I'm home most nights of the week, and we play, and we connect and so on, right? So we have those times. The tricky time is between Marina and I. I don't think we get enough time at the moment to really spend together as a couple, as a team. That we speak more now. We're spending more time now in the times where I'm not necessarily working, but I schedule it in.
And it's
put it in. And I'm conscious of it.
And you make those times mean something when it's happening.
Yeah. And Marina's great. She gave me a gift the other day. She said, "You know what, Rob? People think about having a balance, right? Which I used to believe in balance, but not really. Yeah. I flow between opposites. And so what she's saying is that it's not necessarily about the amount of time. It's about the quality of the time, which I've heard before, but I got a different sense of it from her, coming out of her mouth. So what she's basically saying is, look, when you're playing with the kids in the morning, play with the kids, leave the phone, play with the kids. If we're having a family day on Sunday, I know you got to do some work as well. But when you're done with that, be there with us.
Yep.
Right, and be present.
Well, that's
with
that
us.
same presence that you're talking about, which has been the gift for your whole life, right?
Yeah.
It's that same thing. Yeah, and look, I mean, I'm not married and I don't have kids, so I can't pretend to try to understand and bundle a comparison of my wonderful life to other people's. That would be ridiculous. But I don't know that there's an answer. I don't believe in balance either. I don't think that there is an answer. I think there's just different ways of figuring out what doesn't work, right? To figure out some middle ground that works as much as you can for everybody. But is there a perfect answer? I don't think there is.
I mean, definitely, conscious choices.
Yeah.
Conscious choice making is super important, and it does take something.
Yeah.
Just letting it flow all the time, I find isn't necessarily the answer all the time, but there are different periods of time where I need to do certain things, and in having a partner like Marina, who's very very helpful and very knowledgeable, very pragmatic, right? It's great because then it allows me the time to get stuff done.
Yeah.
That impacts us as a family.
Yeah.
In a positive way.
Yeah. No, that's really beautiful, man. That's good. One last question for you, but before I do that, just want to acknowledge you first of all. Acknowledge you for my observation of you is that you're a very beautiful man. You're a beautiful human, and you're bringing your gifts to the world. And it's not just me who feels it. I think everybody who connects with you can feel that. And the reason I share that specifically is because just your being is an inspiration. Like sometimes we look at people and we say, oh, look at the amazing things that they've done or the amazing things that they've created. But I actually think the greatest inspiration just comes from connecting with people who they inspire us just through their being. And you're one of those people. So you have the Monty seal of approval.
Right back to you, mate. Thank you.
One last question. Oh, actually, before we do that, how can people find you? I'll make sure people get links. I'm sorry, folks, but you cannot get access to this seasoned book. But we'll give you a link to get the ebook or whatever. But
love it. So look, so my website, robertianbonnick.com.
Yep.
You can find all there. There's a rib links, which I can give you later on. But yeah, robertianbonnick.com. And in New Holland, so you go Soul Survivor, How an Abandoned Child, just Soul Survivor actually by New Holland, and you'll get to that. You'll get to that web link as well.
Cool. And social media, Instagram, what's your preferred?
Yeah, look, I'm on all of them. So Robert Ian Bonnick.
Yep.
And you'll find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and so on.
And you're doing a lot of cool interviews as well. So you got some really great content on there as well. So
Speak Up Monday. Really cool platform. Loving it, enjoying it, sharing it, and just connecting with people and allowing inspiration like what you're doing now just to seep out and for people to hold it and grasp it and take what they need to make the next step.
Yep, that's really wonderful. One last question. If you had a one-time superpower to connect a message with all of humanity, languages aside, a one-time superpower to implant a message into every single human on the planet, all 7.8 billion or whatever it is now, what would that one message be?
Yeah, great question. Woo. We're here in Indonesia. Recently, I found the most beautiful thing, man. Oh, and I love talking about it. And I'm going to learn how to pronounce it. Unity in diversity. Do you pronounce it? Tumbaka? Unity in diversity. Yeah. Yeah, so Bhinneka, Tunggal, Ika. That line. So unity in diversity is the slogan that underpins Indonesia. And I love it, man. Like, I love it. So unity is power for me, but that line is it. So that would be my line. Unity in diversity. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people inspire people.
Yeah. That's powerful, man. That's good. No, I love the profoundness in the simple messages sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really nice. Robert, thank you so much. Guys, make sure you check him out, follow him on Instagram, get access to the book, and we'll do a round 2 sometime in the future, brother.
Mate, would love to, brother.
Thank you very much. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Back down the rabbit hole.